Good evening, all. Welcome to the first panel discussion of the conference on state capacities and informal labor markets. The moderator for the session is Lakshmi Parvati. She's an assistant professor at IIM Sirmaur. She's also a PhD student here till last year. She uses work ethnography to study Indian labor markets. Over to you, Lakshmi.
Thank you, Indu. So it goes without saying that I'm so happy to be back at the alma mater. So I think without much ado, we'll delve into the panel discussion of the day. We are thinking of discussing about state capacity and informal labor markets in contemporary India, a subject that sits at the heart of India's growth story and social equity challenge. Now, imagine, KR market around 1 o'clock in the noon. For Delhiites, it could be, Sarojini market. And from that to say Google office of Bangalore or to the many, many riders, gig workers running around in Bangalore delivering stuff, the labor market is actually in front of us bustling. But imagine, creating policies for this, creating understanding policies for this, and, implementing policies for this. So we are actually discussing quite a heavy topic. And on about this, we have the larger structural fluxes like, say, demographic change and new technologies sort of coming about and regulatory reforms, evolving work arrangements. And then there are also persistent sticky structures like weak employment linked protections, a new phase of intermediation, and a policy focus on growth that has been questioned on its ability to translate into secure quality jobs. Now, state capacity in this context is just not about the intent. It's about the ability to design, implement, monitor, adapt policies effectively, and so on. And we have had initiatives like labor codes, e-Shram, Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Manthan, offer opportunities for formalization, social security expansion, and improved welfare delivery, but they also reveal challenges in coverage, enforcement, and last mile delivery. As a phenomenon in constant flux, every juncture sort of offers an opportunity, and we are today grabbing one such opportunity to discuss the opportunity in front of us to reinvigorate state and the direction we should take as we mull on the topic of state capacity. Now, for our conversation today, I would like to think about the labor force at the point of transitioning from, say, informal to formal, and especially contracted, subcontracted workers, including seasonal migrant laborers to cities, gig and platform workers. We will focus less on the self-employed workers who remain still the larger share, but and we will, at the end also reflect on the informal-formal duality after hearing everybody speak about. So to have this conversation, we have an exciting lineup of speakers today. I'll begin introducing the speakers. Dr. Shashikant here is Associate Relations, Industrial Relations Lead at Mars, Pune, with over 15 years of experience across power, automotive, e-commerce, and FMCG sectors in both manufacturing and services. He has deep expertise in labor law, HR, business partnership, industrial relations, wage negotiations, conflict resolution, and diversity and inclusion. He holds an MBA and PhD from IIT Roorkee, a seasoned HR leader in unionized environments. He also brings 600 plus hours of teaching experience in leadership, HR, and organizational behavior. Mr. Lohit Bhatia, President Workforce Management for India and Global Operations at Quest Corp, India's largest staffing firm, leading 460,000 associates across 3,300 clients. With 28 plus years in textiles, auto components, services, he has driven growth in staffing, skilling, and compliances across India, APAC, and Middle East. As three-time president of the Indian Staffing Federation and WEC board member, Lohit engages with government and industry on formalizing India's workforce, enhancing skills, and shaping the future of work. Mr. Zia is a vice president at Center for Effective Governance of Indian States. He heads the personnel management vertical and knowledge creation and management vertical. He brings with him over 2 decades of experience in international cooperation, competency frameworks, organizational development, and learning designs. In his current role, he closely collaborates with central and state government organizations such as DOPT, Capacity Building Commission, Karma Yogi Bharat, Intellectual Property Office, several state departments, and a number of state and central administrative training institutes. He has also worked with and collaborated closely with bilateral and multilateral agencies such as GIZ, ILO, World Bank, and ADB in its past roles. Dr. Ajit Kumar Babu is a social science researcher specializing in migration, skill acquisition, rural transformation, and the social dimensions of technology. He obtained his PhD from the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore, and is working as an assistant professor at the Ramaya Institute of Applied Sciences. His doctoral research focused on the inequalities faced by agriculturalists transitioning to non-agricultural occupations, particularly in terms of skill acquisition, barriers to formal learning, and exclusion from workplace learning. It's a privilege to have all of you here to speak about your experiences, and I heartily welcome all of you to the panel discussion. So, as we have this exciting panel, our conversation today will bring together perspectives from industry, policy, research, and academia to ask these 3 major questions. What are the 2 important labor market trends in the informal labor that you have seen recently, particularly in terms of quality of jobs and employment relations? Secondly, what are the ideal solutions, best practices that are available for addressing the above challenges that each of them have identified? And how do we build a state that is both a facilitator of growth and a guarantor of fair and dignified work? What are the various synergies that amongst the various parties that could be brought about to ensure transitions in our labor market lead to sustainable and decent jobs? So we'll go around in 3 rounds of discussion, answering each of these questions, and we'll have around 15 minutes to each round, with each of you sort of reflecting on your experiences for about 3 to 4 minutes, and then maybe we'll have a closing round of discussion at the end, once if time permits. We'll then open the house for Q&A. So, as pointed out, the first round is sort of setting the context, which is in their experience, what are the identifying the labor market challenges, and particularly what is challenging for the state capacity. So we'll begin with like broad perspective, and from your own field observations to point out 1 or 2 labor force trends, particularly in terms of job quality and changing employment relation, which has been most prominent labor market challenge, and which of these trends would have been the most challenging for the state. I'll begin with Dr. Shashikant, whose experience will certainly help us understand what he thinks. Yeah, over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Lakshmi. So I will give my try to it. Have you ever wondered which was the last legislature which came in India? I will try to make a twist around my reply. So there are 2 type of informal labor markets. So that when we talk about, there are 2 type of population who are working in informal labor. So one is your traditionally we call it comes under definition of employer-employer relationship. We call them as a contract labor, or could be our own employee. When we are saying informal labor market, we are talking about a third-party employees, which is normally a typically in legal sense call them a contract labor, who is being hired by a contractor for a work of a particular establishment. And that legislation, when this came in India, so majority of legislation you will find came post independence of India, somewhere in 1948, 50, 65, and then the last but not the least, the CLR Act came in 1970, which formalized and regulated the working environment, or probably the regulation around the employment of the contract labor in India. And that's how that particular sector had some certain regulation around it. And later on, all these act which traditionally comes under employer-employer relationship like PF, ESIC, all these came as a regulation to reckon it with for the same set of informal, would say the labor which is coming in the working the industry. what I have seen, and I have witnessed that particular change in the industry, especially when I work for an organization which is into e-commerce space, and the shift that I have seen. So there has been a gradual increase in the manufacturing setup. So you have contract labor coming in, and you have a gradual increase. So when I have started working with e-commerce, I have seen the scale and the speed at which hiring is being done. So that organized contract labor, which we call them, the hiring has increased by 3x, 4x within a span which is required to be done in 3 years, now being done in 3 months or 6 months. So that's the first thing that is started happening. Now there's another type of work which is coming up, which we have not seen that much. It's not like that was not there in India. So we call them a gig workers. So normally they're not an employee to any employer. So there is just like a freelancer. We were mutually work in a mutually exclusive arrangement. They have their own right to reject and right to accept to a particular service. So traditionally not an employee to an employee, and they get a service fees for whatever the service they are tendering. And it's not like these particular gig workers were not there in India. You might have seen three traditional gig workers working for us, and one of our senior government official also work like gig worker. One is a newspaper hawker, second one your coolie, railway coolie, and the third one is your LIC agent. You might have seen these three traditional gig workers work without any digital tech. But what happened when this e-commerce come up, and you have people asking for some certain service at their house? That's how urban clap came into picture. Then people demanding things on e-commerce retail platform, and they're asking intermediate to provide some certain product at their place. And then you have riding Uber, Ola, and all these things comes into place. And there's a large number of workforce came into picture, which was not there existing in that particular scale and that particular size. And to give you a number, so when I left that particular organization a year back, so the total number of maximum amount of contract labor that we used to have to a third party organization, where Quest is also a partner to us, it's somewhere around 1 lakh. Can you guess the number of gig workers being employed for doing the last mile delivery or shipment, who are not a employee to our organization but a service provider to us? Any guess? So 1 lakh contract labor who are engaged under our warehouse operation, middle mile operation. Then you have a last mile operation. For last mile operation, we can engage gig workers. And any numbers, any wild guess? So 1 lakh traditionally informal, formal labor. And the second one is gig worker. Numbers, any guess? 10,000, 20,000? Not correct. Around 1 lakh. And the sheer size of scale, and they are being they're working like a faceless people to a face to an organization which is being named, and they're being interacting through a platform. Similarly, you have a large number of gig workers working across. So right now it's come bring two similar challenge right now. So when you're dealing with a scale at the time of speed, and I see two challenges which coming up for the state as well as for the companies, for both the type of manpower. One is your typically contractual labor, we call them, and then one is gig worker. The first one is uh, uh, digital data intervention integrity around it, how they can be digitally integrated, so that you have all the regulatory compliance around contract labor, as well as there's some certain regulation which is supposed to come in years to come, especially in different parts of India, because that act is still in discussion and consideration. And the second part is that there'll be a flexibility in regulation that might be required, because it's very complex market right now. So probably one policy might not be fit for all the kind of organization or industry that we are operating right now. Sorry for giving the long answer.
No, no. Thank you. Thank you, Shashikant. Mr. Lohit, with over 28 years of experience in staffing for textiles, auto components, and services, what is the most important labor market trend that you have identified, which is challenging for the state?
So first, I'll just add to. Thank you very much for inviting me to IIM Bangalore. Beautiful campus, first time inside. So amazing place to be. I'll just add to what Dr. Shashi said. When you look at any form of employment in an organization, there can be 5 ways that a person can be employed. There's a permanent employee where you're directly on the badge of the company. There's a temporary staff who can come through a contracting company, like he said, staffing company, contracting company. There is a third category, which could be an apprentice working with that company, either directly or through an apprenticeship aggregator. There's a fourth category that you could be a consultant. The BCGs, the McKinseys, the Big Fours, and all these are all consultants, and they also come in on a short assignment basis. And then there's the fifth category, which he spoke about, where he said there is gig workers, right? So remember this in your mind, that every organization today has a pie chart, and in that pie chart, the percentage differ from one organization to another, but everybody has practically all five forms of employees working for them. Now let's take a national position, and then I'll come back to why we are here and what we are talking about. National position, we are close to what, 1.42 billion people. We are the most populous place on earth now after, China used to be and no longer is, and now it is India. But when you look at our labor market statistics, what is the labor force participation ratio in India? It's about 55, 57%. What's the global average? It's about 65, 67%. So first things first, we are about 10% labor force participation rate less than any other developed part of the world. That means 10% more people are working, unlike 10% people working in India. This 10% is, by the way, the missing women from work. And the female labor force participation, which now has climbed to 37%, used to be just 22% couple of years back. That 22 to 37 jump also is primarily happened in the self-help group, in the informal sector, in the self-help or the do it by yourself entrepreneurial basis. It's not formal work per se. If you look at the population index, which is between your labor force, which is your 15 to say 60 years, which is where people can typically work. That's the category which we are obsessed about. Ideally, about 65, 67% of the people are there. But of that, of their own violation, the people who are working is only 57% of those folks. Within that, if you look at it, we've got absolute informal, and absolute informal is the 250 million people, which is directly attached to your agriculture today. Least amount of output comes from there. You've got goods and transportation sector, you've got construction sector, you've got warehousing and logistics sector. So these are the absolute informal sectors. And then gradually you start coming into the formal sector. The reason I'm drawing this parallel is the first five forms of employment, out of which gig is technically an informal because they have no employee-employer relationship contract. They don't have a minimum wage. They don't have a social security. They don't have a maternity. They don't have any of those other guidances, is still counted on the formal side in India, whereas the actual informal of India is the other side. So this is the first anomaly that the Indian state has, and which is why the capacity of the Indian work today is only 21% of our entire population is in any shape or form associated with formal work. 79 to 80% of our population is today dependent on informal work. And this becomes the single biggest challenge for both the union government as well as every state government. Because of this, the nation needs to think about what to do, and Manrega becomes one thing and you spend 1 lakh crores every year on it. Because of this, you have to do Ayushman Bharat. When you don't have social security, you have to give some other form of security, and that other form of security is 50,000 crores of Ayushman Bharat. Because of this, you have to give other doles, other subsidies and everything. So the typical anomaly that India has is a very, very high informalization rate. Today, what every state government and union government, irrespective of whichever party they belong to, are talking about is formalization of the Indian economy, and in turn, through the formalization of Indian economy, formalize the workforce. The labor code, as you briefly mentioned, which was approved by parliament and assented by the president a couple of years ago, 5-6 years ago, not yet seen light of day on the day-to-day operating basis, is meant to do that. The employment-linked incentives, ELIs recently, which the government announced, 99,000 crores, Pradhan Mantri Viksit Bharat Rozgar Yojana. That Yojana also is towards this only, that lift more people from informal labor market to formal labor market. Why formal labor market? One, formal labor market gives you something as basic as an employment contract, which means you know your rights, you know your benefits. Second, you get financial inclusion, which means your promised money comes to you on a promised date in your bank account every month, irrespective of whatever may happen, rain, shine, or anything else. Third, you get social security, including maternity benefits, pension, gratuity, and other things and all. This is given to you as a formal worker. Fourth, what happens is you get skilling on the job. And fifth, when you stay long enough, you graduate and move upwards. The difference between an informal worker and a formal worker is an informal worker can also start as an entry level person at 15,000 rupees, but may 40 years later retire exactly at the same position, almost for the same money, with very little progressive improvement. A formal worker can start as an entry level worker and resign 40 years later as a CEO of the company or as the president of the company or as any other position. So that skilling and that growth which formalization enables you gives you that biggest benefit. So today for our government, for our nation, the single biggest challenge is there are far too many people after the underproductive sector, which is the agriculture sector. When the Prime Minister says we should double our farm income, one way of doubling the farm income is productivity of everything goes up. Easier said than done. The second thing is you can increase the productivity by 50%, but you can reduce the number of people in the agriculture land by 50%. You also double your wages by 100%. That means you need to move another 100, 150 million people outside of agriculture into more adjacent sectors, more formal sectors, more stable sectors. And that's probably one of the biggest policy initiative intervention which has to be done. I'll end with just one data point and then I'll come back in the question queue later. 90% of the economies in the world become developed after they move from agri to manufacturing and manufacturing to services. India is a unique test case in the world that we were agri, and agri continues to have 40-45% of your labor with only less than 20% of your GDP output. But we've created a 65% of services with less than 40% of the people. And that leaves us with a sandwiched smaller part of the population in between, which is in manufacturing, which contributes only 15% to the manufacturing ecosystem. You'd be surprised to know, many of you may not remember, when Vajpayee ji was the Prime Minister, back 25 years ago, he had said, India should be manufacturing 25% of its GDP should come from manufacturing, and we should have a formal workforce of 30 to 40%. Even in 2025, unfortunately, we've not reached there. But today, the discourse is such that everybody is talking about it. Everybody is investing in manufacturing. The time for India is right. And this is absolutely the most opportune time for us not to make a mistake and to ensure that we get these benefits.
Thank you, Mr. Rohit. Informality is, in its various forms that we are able to see across. Mr. Zia, how do you think a state has been able to, how capable is the state in its current form to understand informality, or for that matter, the capability of the state? Could you reflect a bit on it?
First of all, thank you so much, Lakshmi, and everybody who invited us here. For me also, like you, first time inside the campus, outside the campus many times. So yeah, before I come there, I think I just want all of you to know that I'm not sectoral expert from the unorganized or informal sector. I come from a human capacity development background, so I'll try to bring that perspective. We have the experts talking about the data and other aspect. I think going back to the first question that you were asking about, what are the key problems? And from a very generalist point of view, and from a very people-oriented lens, we are talking about a sector which is, as you said, Lohit, 80, 85%, 90% workforce come from this particular sector. And not only that, around 50% of the total national income is coming from this particular sector. So, of course, it is an important sector. With regard to the issues, I think there are many issues The issues related to wages, there are issues related to gender, as you said, multiple issues. But if you look at the overall sector from the people point of view, we're talking about a kind of continuum of two different generations at the same time in the sector. So you have currently, according to some data, by 2050, you'll have around 20%, 19-20% of the population who will be the aging population. What does it mean? It means 200. We're talking about 280 million people who will need social security in the years to come. So, for me, social security is one major issue that we need to start thinking on all sides, all the actors, all the stakeholders who are going to take decisions, who are going to implement decisions, who are going to create the opportunity for this workforce. So social security becomes one of the very, very important area to think about. Now the question is, what has government done about it? And as you said, you touched upon the codes. There's one code specifically talking about social security. And in my mind, this is where the state capacity comes into play. We all use a very common sentence that we are very good in policy making, but when it comes about policy implementation, that is where the issue is. But also we'll have to realize that what is the percentage of government officials per 1,000 or per 100. If you compare with China, which we compare a lot as a country with, we are far, far behind in terms of how many members of the among the citizen one particular government officer should cater to. So there is a scarcity with regard to there is vacancies unfilled even in the government space, and it accumulates to a level where there is a lot of issue with regard to capacity gaps at different levels. So maybe we have a lot of good policies, but I think human capacity at every layer within the government is something that is a kind of relevant area to think about. I think there are certain initiatives like I think it will be kind of surprising for you that until 2021 we had only policies in terms of training and development in the government sector. So if you go back to 2012, which is the year when national training policy was launched in India, and for the first time, when in multiple European countries, when competency-driven capacity building was a concept in 60s and 70s, it was only in 2012 when we started talking about competency-driven capacity building for the government staff. But when it comes to having a kind of implementation framework around the policy, it only happened in 2021. So in the form of, many of you would know, a Mission Karmyogi, which is a national flagship program, which is a kind of effort to move from rule-based training to a role-based training of government staff. And this where for the first time we started talking about having competency framework for multiple levels and layers within the government system. So there are initiatives, but we are not meeting the pace that is required to meet the kind of challenges. The second challenge for me is more futuristic, and then maybe that is something policymakers, big employers need to think about. And this is also related to the majority of the group sitting in this room, the kind of age group. Most of the people we have in this room, maybe between 20 to 30. And as of now, in 2025, we talk about the percentage of share of this age group, 2023 age group. We are talking about 27% workforce who is currently part of the unorganized or organized labor force. So the question is the aspiration same of this current generation? We talked about Gen Z, we talk about millennial. I think the aspirations are different. It is, and the employers and the policy have to keep in mind the kind of aspirations that this generation has, because this is the generation that is going to be the future workforce, whether it is unorganized or organized sector. So a lot of conversation is required to understand the aspirations of this generation. I think DEI, I think you are handling DEI in your company. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that need to be part of the policy at the government level, need to be part of a kind of DNA of large-scale employers. So in my mind, yeah, these two issues, and then yeah, I think capacity at the level of implementers of policy within the government is something that we need to think about.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Zia. So, given that there are severe capacity challenges at multiple levels of the state, Dr. Ajit, you have studied the composition of the informal workforce. You know, you have extensively studied migrant workforce. Could you give us an idea about how they can be challenging for the state? What are the challenges that arise out of the informality for state? Yeah.
Okay, thank you first for inviting me to this panel. And unlike others panelists, I used to visit this campus on regular basis to meet Professor Kamath and take her like guidance for my PhD. But after completing my PhD, I was not able to get a chance to visit to this beautiful campus. And I was happy when you like invited me for this panel discussion. But at the same time, I was a bit nervous. So, but whatever like I will share, I will share from my field experiences, and I did field work in Jharkhand and also in Bangalore. And I have been following the migrant workers, particularly those they involved in the construction sectors since 2019. And recently I am doing my field work in Pragati Nagar in Hyderabad, one of the destinations of this sort of migrant workers. So as compared, like when you like ask the bigger challenge, like the transitions in the informal sector. So I will start from a macro change. So, so one of the biggest transition in India today is the movement of the millions of workers. They are leaving agriculture and moving into the non-agricultural informal jobs. So like most of us are like aware about the scale, but to just give the magnitude of this particular movement, as per 2011 census, which is like quite old, 8.9 million self-cultivator, they moved out of agriculture between 2001 and 2011 census. So the village where I did my fieldwork in Jharkhand, in 1991, the main agricultural population was as high as 91.9%. And by 2001, it was 26%. And when I did my field work, in my survey, I found that only 8% of the workers are engaged in agricultural activities. And so this change is massive. And the state has never clearly recognized these particular transitions. And as a consequence of that, what we saw during the migrant crisis, during the COVID time, where neither the city, the destinations of this migrant, nor the home, what they call the sense of home in the village, wanted to take the responsibility of this worker. So even though they like what we call as the reverse migration, they return to the village, but within like between the like different wave of the pandemic, they started again searching for the job in the city. So that is one point, the transitions part. And what I wanted to underline is that the transition is not linear. This movement out of agriculture to non-agricultural activities is not linear. It is complex, and it was also unidirectional. Like it is movement, it is not unidirectional, like the bidirectional, I mean to say. And the problem here is like it is full of uncertainty, and the second thing is like it is full of inequality. And thus transitions, the like getting access to the non-farm jobs, it is like deeply shaped by the socioeconomic factors, whether you'll get an access to the non-farm jobs or you'll like excluded from that, making the transitions. So from my research, I wanted to highlight two challenges. One is the skill mismatch when you're making these transitions, and the dependency on the informal learning processes. Second thing, caste is still continuing as a central force in getting access to the non-agricultural work, or even returning to the agriculture, what we saw in the Maharashtra region. And one of the main challenges, which is getting less attentions, both in the the academic literature and also in the policy discourse, each though we know that certain places are specialized in certain type of skills. If I don't know whether someone is from Odisha or not. If I say Kendrapada district of Odisha, then plumber. So if I'll say that Jharkhand, some part of Ramgarh, they say that centering workers. If I'll say that some person from Madhya Pradesh, they will say that bricks line workers or the plastering workers. So these places are there is a special dimension to the skills that is getting less attention in the discourse, both in the academic and also in the policy discourse. So why I'm identifying these are the challenges. The first point, the problem of skill mismatch and the dependency, over dependency on the informal learning. So the village where I studied, it was around 60 kilometers away from Ranchi. It was in Ramgarh district of Ranchi. So within 2 kilometers periphery of that village, there were Polytechnic College and Women ITI College. And the Women ITI College was a newly constructed buildings. And it was so funny when I first time heard that the villagers referred to that ITI college, Women ITI College, as Bhoot Bangla, because it was not in the use. And the Polytechnic College, they felt that this Polytechnic building was built for others, not for us. Because the students are from West Bengal, most of the students are from West Bengal rather than from Jharkhand. And even they are from Jharkhand, they are not from the Ramgarh region rather than from the other parts of the Jharkhand. So that is one point. So creating the infrastructure is not enough. That is one challenge. People, there is mobilization problems. So as a result, if they're not, one more thing, it is not about what the state is taking initiatives. So there are so many autonomous bodies. For example, the JSLPS, Jharkhand State Livelihood Promotion Society, and there is Matikala Parishad. So all these autonomous body, they were taking initiative to give skills to different sets of people. But very rarely these villagers participate in those skill development programs or initiatives. Rather, they prefer to participate in the informal processes. Particularly, they prefer to migrate and learn the skills. And the informal learning was at the workplace by observations, by imitations, like learning from others, by imitations through problem solving, or any form of informal processes of learning. They depended on that thing. So there are why they were doing that thing to reduce the opportunity cost of learning. And second thing is to, they wanted to get access to the workforce in the early age. So if you spend time in training, you will not get access to the work at the very early age. So you learn the skills at the workplace, and then second, you'll get the access easily. Even though there is a greater preference for the informal learning processes, like the access to the formal learning processes, this informal processes, the access to the informal processes is also uneven, and it was shaped by the socioeconomic identity of the individual's family or the households or the caste. For example, the migration networks, if you wanted to get access to the work opportunity in the cities, the migrant networks were caste, they're caste bias. Like Kumar had one migration network, some Mahatos had one migration network. So in this process, those they did not have the migration capital to start their migration networks, they were left behind. Those they were excluded both from these formal initiatives of learning or training skills, and also not able to access the informal learning, workplace learning. So they are like the most vulnerable groups in this particular regions. And many a times they were in the pressures to learn multiple skills, what I was calling as the multiplicity of the skills. So because they need to switch from one job to another job because there is no certainty. The second thing is like some of them, when the vulnerability is like at the peak, so they generally involved in the illegal activities for their survival. And in Jharkhand, this is common practice, like they go to the open pit coal mine and steal coal and sell that coal and like survive with that money. Some of them let prepare mahua and sell that mahua and make their ends to meet. So that was the excluded group. At the same time, there was also a pressure to specialize in particular skills to get succeed in the labor market.
Okay.
So these are the different challenges, and there is this special dimension, and that is we need to understand the special dimension, like how this place is related to one particular skills. Why a certain place are known for certain types of the work? Is it because of the network, or it is because that place is like creating such like environment for that particular type of work? Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Ajit. So, I mean, to understand it from a comprehensive perspective, we have the workforce transitioning from agriculture to non-agricultural jobs. And this, as we talk about, is expected to improve the productivity, as you sort of mentioned. But we also know that the jobs that are available in the cities are, at the other end of the employment relation, where they are not in a technically employer-employee relation. And at that context, we see that states are required to step up to provide the social security models that otherwise they were not really, giving to somebody who's participating in the labor force, because participation in labor force itself was some sort of, income. There was some social security coming out of the participation in itself. But right now, in the context that we are finding workers moving out of the agriculture to cities to work, and even in gig employment, I would like you to reflect on the best practices that you have come across in your experience, in your industry engagements, in your engagement with the state, to address any sort of social security challenges or the challenges that you have sort of identified. For instance, like informality is one challenge, and how has state or industry sort of addressed? Shashikant, please.
So I've been part with many employer organization as well as with the state government also in last 2 years with respect to this particular gig workforce that we are talking about right now. That's an informal labor that we had right now. So it's a not an issue with respect to, let's say, country like India. It's an issue which is at global level. So no country across globe has a legislature around it. So there's no regulation available across globe which regularize this non-traditional engagement of different type of person working for a different type of organization and giving those servicing, getting service fees paid out of it. However, there are two cases which has came across. The one is of a Supreme Court case of UK where they changed the employment status of Uber driver to the employee-employer relationship for that particular country, but that particular piece of thing is just a judgment, not a part of legislation. Similarly, the Spanish in the country Spain, the Supreme Court of Spain provided a similar kind of judgment where they directed all these aggregator into food delivery system. They said that kindly ensure that in the next 3 months or 6 months they need to regularize all these people, and they should come under the ambit of all the social security welfare measures that is required to be given in a traditional employment relationship. So across globe there is no law, and that's why the across country are clubbing together and they're sitting in ILO convention, and they're trying to make a standard around it. So Dr. Manjunath Nordcame is also a part of that particular memo from the government of India, along with some certain industry people who are also going there and trying to make a standard around it. So gig workforce is a reality right now. So, and it has come like quite a huge number, and it's a problem for every country, because since they do not come under that definition, so many of legitimate right to an employee or raising a dispute into a, let's say with respect to the service fees they are getting or social security, they should be having morally, not by law. So there's no system around it, because a gig worker on any particular day can work for Ola, can work for Zomato, can work for Swiggy, can work for Flipkart, also can work for Amazon also. You cannot say that Amazon is an employer at that point of time. You can move around and also can become a coolie. A coolie at railway station can do multiple things at the same time with all these things. But however, there has to be some certain solve around. So one is the collaborative effort required. So there's some certain problem statement which is keep coming. So one is there has to be social security around this informal labor. So, and it should not be pushed towards only the state responsibility. I'm saying state or government responsibility. It's a responsibility, collective responsibility of people who are engaging these workforce, all the companies, aggregators, then the state government who has tried to create a framework regulation which is acceptable and workable. It has to be practical, workable, not to be very complex, so that easy to implement. And the third one, the participation from the gig worker itself, because their skilling or reskilling is also very important. So and Nitin Lohit has said a very important thing, that there has to be some certain formal movement from this informal to a formal. So there has to be some certain skilling done when they are being engaged as a gig worker, probably, and a certain point of time they should move out to a regular employment at certain point of time and they get skilled. So two things can be done. One is it has to be a data-driven digital interface, and where eSharam portal came into picture, where they try to register all the gig workers on that platform, and they require to put their details where they're being providing services and all that. These are very nascent stage, and but it's not integrated. So there's a requirement of API interface where a person can have a real-time detail where a person is working at different organization, giving different gig, and at the same time he's getting cumulative amount of wages, service fees for a duration, and basis that duration cumulative amount, some social security attached to it along with the contribution from social security from the organization as well as the government. And the second piece is skilling of these. So there has to be some certain national skill centers which is required to be developed in collaboration by government, state, as well as the companies, or probably some CSR fund can be allocated to that, and probably this particular movement can taken a place. So these are the two things that I will say from the employer point of view.
Yeah, thank you. So we are thinking about a welfare model where the employee is being supported by the state as well as the employer and by themselves as well. Mr. Lohit, how does Quest operate in this setup? How have you thought about formality, informality, and the transition between?
Yeah, so going back to what we were discussing earlier, the informal labor market versus the formal labor market, and the points that the fellow panelist raised about gig. So first things first, why is it an issue? Why should the state even bother about it? Why should the state even have to do anything about it? We're a free country. Everybody should be choosing to do whatever they freely should do. I'll tell you why. Manrega, while the act came many, many years ago, what did it attack? It said anybody who's a landless laborer, does not have formal work or any form of work, can come to the state, demand work, and work. Do you know how many days they are paid? 115 rupees is the guarantee by the state for 365 days, only 115 days, and 205 rupees. If you do the math, you'll come to know they are earning only 36 odd thousand rupees in a year. Divided by 12 months, that's 3,000 rupees a month. So at the base of the pyramid, the state is giving only 3,000 rupees, which is just about 100 rupees a day. Very shortly, that 100 rupees a day might even be just $1 a day. Keep that in mind. If you want to, if you're a 6th or an 8th or a 10th pass and you continue to stay in the villages, then, and Dr. Ajit can probably add to that, a lot of informal work is available. You can become a shop boy, shop girl, you can do this, that, and all. You can earn cash wages of 5,000, 7,000 very easily in a lot of states. And a lot of states are these days giving doles of unemployment wages. So you get extra 3, 4,000 rupees. You're living off the land. You can make about 10,000 rupees doing that. You stay there. The minute you transition into formal work, whatever the shape and form of that formal work is, whether it's permanent employment, it is temporary employment, gig work, or whatever, invariably your starting salary or your starting wages for a month is about 15 to 18,000 rupees a month. But this is not what is important. So it's not important that it's 18,000, so it's 6 times better than Manrega. Hence, the state should push for that. The important thing is, and we run a very large program with India's largest automobile manufacturers. We have about 14,000 girls deployed there at apprentices. They pay these girls about 18,000 rupees a month on earn and learn programs of the government, which are apprenticeship programs. After 3 years, the girls get absorbed by other manufacturing clients. Last time when we did an action plan like this, we realized invariably girls who were earning about 18,000 rupees a month got picked up by other employers between 25 to 35,000 rupees a month after just 3 years. So it's almost doubling of your wage just in 3 years. Many of these girls said, we don't want to go back to more work. We want to educate ourselves. The same employer, the same automobile giant, says that we'll put them through 4 years of engineering course now. And when they cross that engineering course, they come back to our factories and become GETs, graduate engineering trainees. And graduate engineering trainees then become permanent employees to that organization at the base of the pyramid as an assistant supervisor or an assistant quality assurance inspector. You know what's the starting salary of a girl then? 8 lakh rupees a year. So can you just see how the math changes? The minute you come out of the informal labor market to the formal labor market, the first 3 years may look very frustrating. And I know a lot of media keeps asking this question, but Lohit, 25 years ago, also IT professionals were paid the same 3 lakh rupees. The banking guys were paid the same. The insurance people were paid the same. And we often tell them, yes, the first 1, 2, or 3 years seems as if you're still entering the labor market at a very low wage. But once you gather the skills and you get the work credentials, you move upwards, because don't forget, a career of a professional is 38 to 40 years. It's not 3 and 5 years. So think about 38, 40 years, where do you want to be? Now, coming back to your specific question on what Quest does. So Quest has about 470,000 people. As I sit here in front of you today, about 3,300 customers. We have 40% of our deployment in tier 2 and below towns. So that's in 6,400 cities. Balance 60% are in the top 10 metros and the state capitals and others, which is about 100 odd cities. Every year we add about 400,000 people into the labor market, out of which about 150 to 200,000 people get a UAN number for EPFO for the very first time. That means Quest enables them to come and transition from informal labor market to formal labor market and work with one of our customers and gather those skills. In the last 5 years, we've invariably contributed 1% of entire country's EPFO data just as a single organization as Quest Corp itself. And prior to our demerger, which just happened, with 2 more companies were born out of and listed out of Quest Corp. Now we are 3 listed companies. Those 2 firms were another 160,000 people. So together, Quest used to be, pre-demerger, we used to be about 6,29,000 people. So what is the nature of work that we typically do? Our work is, majority of the customers have seasonal demand, they have short-term demand, and they have strategic volume demand, which they cannot fulfill themselves. They can't find the attractive people in the labor market across the country. So our job is to find those people in the informal labor market, match the skills, prepare them for the job, get them in tune with the customer, onboard them with the customer, manage their payroll, manage their compliances, ensure all the statutories are met. People are paid on time. They go to the customers every day. Upskilling happens, productivity enhancement happens, and those who are really good then get absorbed by the clients and become permanent employees to the customers itself. On one end of the spectrum, we hire a lot of 10+2 with an ITI background or even a 12th pass. So that's about 33 to 40% of our population. And then we also have graduates. We also have about 8% of the people who are postgraduates. On the other end of the spectrum, we have cloud and data analysts who work with even the likes of Big Fours or who work with the likes of GCCs. We work with over 102 GCCs in the country as we speak, because a lot of GCCs also do not hire only permanent employees. They hire permanent come short-term project and contract employees, only to absorb those employees once their project becomes permanent in nature. So we are a labor market intermediary who gets informal workers into the formal labor market and ensure that people stay there long enough for them to start understanding why formal work is different than informal work.
Yeah, thank you.
Just want to add
Yeah.
one thing. So with respect to the gig workers, so you have seen FK Minutes delivery partner coming to your facility. So these prominent companies. So I give an example of the organization where I worked. So they used to give accidental insurance of 5 lakh, not statutory obligated, but they're doing it at their own responsibility. So accidental insurance of around 5 lakh. Then term life insurance is also around 5 lakh additional, and then 1 lakh of medical insurance. And they have also bring a partner who also give a short term credit of 5,000 rupees to 10,000 rupees depending upon the civil score, the score of that particular person or gig worker. So but it's not every aggregator doing the same thing. So that's why a regulation is required to come. That's why it's a responsibility of state organization coming together and coming to a workable agreeable social security for these kind of informal labor, which bits and organization are doing in bits and pieces and doing a great job, some of the organization, but it has to be done across.
Great.
Yeah.
So we have seen the transition of workers from the rural parts to the cities and, educating themselves and also getting jobs. Mr. Ajit, could you also give us an insight into, your experience of tracking workers in the construction sector and, how are they handling with the social security or the services that are available for them? What is the best practice that you've seen in terms of the challenges for workers who are working in the construction sector?
Can you open that picture?
I'll just
Just to give an idea about how they are living in the city,
okay.
if it is possible.
Yeah, I'll just check.
It is in the download.
It's in the downloads. Mm-hmm. This one. Yeah. Okay.
So this is a photo from Hyderabad, my recent visit to my field site. So this was the building they were constructing, and this was the place they were like staying. So one room, that seat room, there are 7 to 8 persons from Titlagarh district of Orissa. They were like staying, and they were engaged in bar bending work. You cannot stand there because that place was stinking like anything. You cannot stand there because the place was wet. You cannot stand there because it was full of mosquitoes. And forget about the drinking water, the arrangement for kitchen and the bedroom, bathroom, whatever, the arrangement within a home. But they are like staying and they are like invisible in the city. But before coming to these things, just I wanted to highlight few challenges, particularly in this process of transition from agriculture to from village to the informal work in the city. So there are 3 types of inequality that is emerging in this process. One, between groups, between individuals, and within the lives of an particular individual. What we can call as the intergroup, interpersonal, and also intrapersonal inequality. Just to give an idea about how it is emerging from this process of transitions. So how these people are getting access to the jobs in the informal jobs in the city through the migration network. And these networks, as I mentioned, it was like caste based. And why it is caste based? Because the migration capital are arranged by that particular caste. So if it is like caste based, then people from the same caste, they get access to the jobs in the city. People from those caste, that are in the similar hierarchy in the village or in that region, they also get access through that network in the city. But those, they are in the down of that ladder in the hierarchy, they will like excluded from the migration process or better opportunity in the city. One example from that village, the Kumhars had the largest migration network from that village, and which was functioning earlier in Bangalore and now in Hyderabad. That was like more than 30 people were part of that migration network. And in that migration network, the Mahatos, who are like in the similar hierarchy in the village, they had the access to migrate, whereas the Nayak, the scheduled caste, the Bedya, the scheduled tribe, the Mundas, the scheduled tribe, the Karmalis, the scheduled tribe, were excluded from this migration network. That creates the intergroup inequality in accessing the jobs or opportunity in the city. Now, why people aspire for jobs in the city, even though they have to stay like this? They aspire, as Lohit was mentioning, that because of the payment, the difference in the wage structure. So there, if I worked as a Rajmistri, what we call as the mason, I can maximum earn 500 rupees. But in the city, I can earn 750 rupees for 8 hours of work. But these people will not work 8 hours. They work for dead hajri. Dead hajri means one hajri plus another half hajri. Means half day. Means
Half day.
8 hours plus 4 hours means 12 hours they work. So if I like work for 12 hours, so I can earn more than 1,000 rupees. So they wake up 3:33 in the morning. They prepare their food, particularly this side I'm saying. They finish all their like activities, whatever they wanted to do, domestic activities. They packed their tiffin box and started their journey from Pragati Nagar to Manikonda and walked from 6 to 6 and try to earn more than 1,000 rupees so that they can earn in the real terms. Why real terms? Because they are earning the nominal wage in the city, but they are spending with the rural price. So they are earning at the real terms. And the real terms, it is very high. Most young people, it was like surprising to see after 12th or like 10th, they are joining these migration networks and they are working here just to buy one Apache or one Pulsar or one iPhone. Most of them have iPhone or like the, what is that, Samsung big phone. So that was their aspiration. One guy I met, he was from Mahato caste. Just before his marriage, he migrated to Hyderabad just to show that he's working outside so that he can demand more tilak or what is the dowry. And finally, he like made that negotiations and he got 2.2 lakhs plus one Pulsar 220cc bike. That was the aspirations of these people. They don't mind how they like live here, but they mind what they can do in the village. One person's like, sorry, like I'm taking more time, but it is interesting to share actually. One Thikedar, he had very small piece of land and because of his caste identity, he cannot like buy more land. So he built tower houses in the village, one after another, one after another. And to show his status that I am a Thikedar and you should not go by my caste identity, you should go by my economic status. And he also gained that economic status now. That was the aspiration. So migration is creating intergroup inequality. At the same time, people are aspire for the migrations because they wanted to earn more in the real terms or near real wage and to develop their status in the village. So I asked, like these people are working in the construction sectors. I asked that you also get this type of like work in the village, but they say that we can't work this type of work near the village. We don't mind to work this type of work in the city because no one is watching here. This intergroup inequality, why I'm like saying that this transition is also creating intergroup inequality. This migration network is not only caste-based network, but it is like skill-specific network. So once they will come to the city, they will specialized on a particular skills. Why they will like specialize on a particular skills? Because the contract are arranged in such a way. The builders or the owners of the project will give contract to the material owners. The material owners will give the contract to the Thekedar, the labor contractor. And the labor contract, the material owner will give the contract to the labor contractor based on their specific skills or their specialization in that particular network. So the Jharkhand workers will get the contract for the centering workers. The MP contractors, labor contractors will get the contract for the whole project on the bricks, lines, and the plastering. The Odia workers will get the plumbing work and also the bar bending work. So the whole project was like different networks or like supplying different types of work to complete this particular project. So once they will like come and specialize in a particular skills, then they will save the wage structure and also the types of work. And that creates the inequality, interpersonal inequality. So once, and these works are like uncertain because this is assignment-based migration. Once they will get the assignment, they will come in the city and they will work. Once the assignment is finished, the project is finished, they will again move to the village and they wait for the next assignment. So it is neither the seasonal migration nor the circular migration. What I'm calling it is assignment-based migrations. So the assignment is determining your the place of work, the nature of work, your destinations, everything, the wage structure, everything. So that creating the interpersonal inequality. The third point, how it is creating the interpersonal inequality is this migration is male-dominated migration. So you cannot see a female like the woman in the work site. So women are like excluded from this opportunity. So that is reinforcing the gender gap. That is the interpersonal inequality. And how it is creating the intrapersonal inequality? As I told that the nature of work is like assignment-based work. So if it is assignment-based work, so 1 month I am employed, the next month my assignment is complete, I am back in home, I don't have work. Employed to unemployed. So intrapersonal inequality. Second thing, I am specializing in the city because my network demanding that I need to specialize in a particular job. So I specialized in a particular skill. For example, like just give me like just 2 seconds. Centering work. So in the village, they will do the centering work with the bamboo and the wooden plywood. But in the city, when you'll come, you'll like use the jack, the iron jack. So you'll be specialized in that particular work. And when you like back to the home, the practice is not existing. Your skill is redundant. And your skill, even if it is not redundant, the skill is like losing the market value. Then what will happen? You will search for opportunity in other work. Clear. Suppose one JCB driver working in Hyderabad, but he is not getting JCB work near in the village. So he will like work as a helper to the masons in the village. So his status is going down.
Right.
So intrapersonal inequality. So he was a driver, he was a Rajmistri, because here if you are like specialized, you consider it a Rajmistri. But in the village, if you know only settling work, they will not call it a Rajmistri, they will call it the half Mistri. And you know, to get that Rajmistri title, you have to know the plastering, centering, brickline, everything. So your status is like reducing. That means you are like intrapersonal inequality. So these are the challenges. What are the priorities? There are like 3 priorities. People like one is demand-led skill training, bridging the locational mismatch, and third is to reducing the gender gap. So these are the priorities we need to like focus on. If like there is questions, I'll like explain this.
Sure. So I mean, now imagine yourself as a state. Look how complex it is. Now I am putting that question out to you, Zia. What do you think of, building the capacity of the state? You have worked on competency-based frameworks. So how does that help to build a state that is able to provide social security or the support services for a workforce that we have heard about till about now from Lohit, from Ajit, and from Shashikant?
Tough one. Huh? No, I'll build upon what Lohit was mentioning about. You took the example of MG Narika. One of the most successful schemes, yet not meeting the requirement. And if in today's time, if you're talking about anybody living in India with whichever part of India, earning 3,000 or less in a month, I think we should question that. So, but before I move on to the state capacity, I think we all agree, all of us will agree in this room, there are a lot of policies in India that needs a reform, that needs reformulation. But take a breath and just think about any central ministry in India and think about where majority of the policy formulation starts. So if you think of any central ministry, generally you will have assistant section officers, undersecretaries, deputy secretaries, directors, joint secretaries, additional secretaries, and principal secretaries. So this is the hierarchy you're talking about when you're talking about any central ministry. But just take a guess, which is the space where policy formulation would start? Any guesses? At the top, that would be more majority of us would guess. But surprisingly, under secretary and the section officer is the position where majority of your paperwork starts. Now start thinking about when we talk about capacity building, we say that of course the world is changing, so do we need to change, and so do we need to change because the skill set required today is different from what it was required yesterday. But think about the learning and development opportunities for this mid-management team working in any central ministry or even in state department. You'll be surprised, and maybe some of you already know about it, that when you talked about capacity building in a state or in any central department, particularly for this category of people who are doing who are heavy lifting majority of the work in the system, because the training and development was considered more of a kind of rule-based training and development in the government sector. So when you joined the office, that was the first time when you got a training in terms of your probation training or induction training, whatever. The second training was only when you were supposed to move from an ASO to become an SO. So training certification was more of a kind of requirement for you to move from one level to the next level. And hence it was called rule-based training. If you compare the opportunity for learning and development for the top cadre officers, you would not put both the categories in the same box. And that has changed, and that is changing now since 2021, the launch of Mission Karmyogi as a national flagship program. What did it do? It did one of the major shift that was required in the system, in the learning and development system for the government officials. It said that it moved from rule-based training to a role-based training. So today, for example, if I'm a section officer and working in, let's say, education ministry, but tomorrow I take the responsibility of a Ministry of Health, the role is changing. Even though I'm a section officer, but my role is changing. So hence, because I'm getting into a new role, I need to learn new skill set to perform in that particular role. So that was the major shift that has happened. But it is also in its infancy stage. No, it is not matured as a program. So there are a lot of struggles. There are a lot of push factors that the central government has taken up. They have created different implementation mechanisms. We have a central commission, which is called Central Capacity Building Commission, which is responsible to act as a think tank and bring in the best practices from across the world. The second thing was that we always say that government offices look very, very busy. Well, they are, because understaffing is also one of the major issue in state as well as central department. If you try to do the vacancy analysis, there are multiple vacancies which are yet to be filled. So that means that you'll have to bring learning and development accessible in such a manner that they can access the learning and development related topics and aspects when they want to do it. And this brings me to what Ajit, you were saying, and it is so much true to the overall concept of capacity building that if you talk, there's a concept called 70-20-10 principle in capacity building, wherein it says that 70% of the learning happens by the individual himself or herself, which we also call learning by doing. So 70% of the knowledge retention, skill retention, or whatever you're learning, it happens when you do it on your own. 20% happens peer-to-peer, and only 10% happen in this kind of formal environment. But and that is the learning pyramid. But if you think about what is the resource investment, it is flipped. Majority of the resource is invested in formal capacity building. Least is invested on the major, which is the 70% of learning, where 70% of learning happens. And Mission Karmyogi, with the concept of Karmyogi Bharat, which is also a special purpose vehicle, is trying to digitize learning so that it is accessible for any individual within the government sector, and the third component, which is an integral part of this overall concept, is training for everybody. So regardless of which position, whether you are an ASO or a director or a joint secretary in the government system, training is available for everybody. So basis, whatever is the requirement of your new role or the current role, you try to understand and try to learn from what is available. Now, how does it happen, and how did we do it in the Intellectual Property Office? One of the major challenge, and maybe Aloit, you would agree, Sashi, you would agree, that one of the major challenges in capacity building is the sustainability aspect of it. How do you sustain learning among the officials, among the people for whom you're designing the learning? And that is what this flagship program has done beautifully, that they have tried to work around and create a concept called capacity building unit housed in the ministry or the department or the organization, led by the people from within the ministry or the department. So that is step number one. So today, if you're talking about state capacity, and if you're talking about capacity building efforts in any department, the step number one is to identify right kind of people who can drive the learning and development process within the department. And hence, the starting point is to form a CBU. That is what we did in the Intellectual Property Office. Because it is a competency-led capacity building, it is important, and you'll be surprised, and maybe not surprised, that a lot of the position holders in IP office, when we started interacting with them, were not having their work allocation orders. And when we did this exercise, and Anima from my team leads that particular project, when we started interacting with the officers, and the starting point was to understand what they do in a day-to-day basis. And we tried to divide their action or activity in 3 categories. What they feel is relevant to the position or the role that they are performing. What they feel is relevant but not necessary. And what are some of the things they feel that is not necessary at all, and then they're not able to link anything that they do with their position or the role they're doing. To our surprise, majority of the activities were in column 3.
Mm-hmm.
So that means there was a clear mismatch between the position and the role a person is performing in a department and the actions or activity that he or she is doing. So the first step was to create we call a concept called fracking, which is the function for defining roles, activities, and attaching competencies to it. So the first step was to understand different roles people play in different positions. What are the major activities that they do in that particular position? And linking each of the role with different kinds of competencies that is required. So for example, if if I have to document something as one of my role, if I'm a documenter of certain thing as a role, so what are the kind of competencies that will be required to perform this particular role? Combining all these three things creates the work allocation order. That is the only first step to give you clarity about what you are supposed to do in this particular position. So that is the starting point. So once you have clarity about what I'm supposed to do as a section officer or a examiner in intellectual property office, the second question is, how well are you prepared to perform this particular role or perform these set of activities? And this is where, after competency profiling, the second step comes in, which is competency gap analysis.
Okay.
So currently at the Karmayogi Bharat level, there is a portal called iGot, which also offers self-assessment mechanisms, and wherein you give your profile. There are certain set of assessment instruments. You take the assessment, and then it gives you per competency wise where you are. Let's say, for example, if you are required to be at level 3, it tells you whether you are at level 3 or not. Basis that, we create the learning calendar for each of the position within the department. So that's one cycle of understanding profile, understanding the learning gaps, and then creating learning calendar for each of the position. On all the three kinds of competencies, which is domain competencies, functional competencies, and very important, behavioral competencies, because that is something that has been missing for a long time. That one of the major role as a government officer is to interact with citizens, interact with people, but interacting with people does not require domain skill. It requires certain behavioral skills and competencies to be in the conversation, have human to human conversation. So that was the overall framework that we did. But on top of it, it was very why IP. We say that, and this and the CBC claims that IP is one of the 3 best performing central departments in India in terms of capacity building efforts. It is not only because of this framework, it is also because of the very dedicated and invested leadership who felt the need of it, who felt IP was lagging. There were a lot of pendencies because of the capacity gaps that were there. So it required a lot of effort from the leadership. So a lot of push factor was created by the leadership himself. Then you needed people who are representing in the capacity building unit. They're not paid extra. This is the kind of voluntary responsibility that you're giving. So identifying the right kind of people who feel for the organization and who feel that this is a kind of important initiative. So these two, and then because IP as an organization is a kind of multi-sectoral organization, you have multiple actors that come into play. So a regular and continuous interaction with the multi-stakeholders, multiple different actors, combining these 3 together, and keeping the scope expanding. So it started with a 5-member committee in the CBU. Today we have 25 people who are running the show. 2023. It used to take a particular time to complete one particular application. That has drastically come down. So basically, coming back to your question with regard to the state capacity and how, I think there are a lot of policies which are, as you said, they are either, for example, the codes 2020 already finalized, but yet to see the light of the day. So implementation becomes one of the issue, and that is where I think capacity of the people who are implementing is one of the crucial aspect. Policy formulation and reformulation, revamping the policy is another issue. And that is where, again, the capacity of middle management people within the state and center is the key to, contribute to.
Got it. So given the changes that we are witnessing in the labor market in terms of, the labor force itself is calling themselves half maestri to gig worker, we need concerted effort to make the state capable to handle the labor force that is emerging every day. So, given the paucity of time, I am, if there are any pressing questions in the audience, I think we can accommodate one or two. And then we will have a closing remark from each of you, because I think we should not leave this room with a grim reality of having so many challenges. So, yeah.
Hey, Ajit, yeah, your observation that the chances of the Sittal becoming Mestri or the helper becoming the foreman is near to nil. It's really brilliant. And no, in this new order, one side you also observed, like here, because this observation question the traditional theory of like tunnel effect, like people now they can't see their future in one side, and another side you also observe the conspicuous consumption, like people are consuming for the identity. So there is aspiration for consumption, there is a like less chances for them to be having a better career in whatever they are doing. So in this contradiction, how it is reflecting in the like the workers mentality, like are they are blindsided or they can see it, are they agitated or positive, pessimistic or optimistic, like whether they can see this, what is your observation about this contradiction reflected in the mentality of or the attitude of workers? No, I'm asking whether they can like now they have like now driver can't think that he can become a owner of that like car one day, like so now that helper can't think that he will become a maestri and he can build a house for his, like he can take it on his own. So now, so whether they can see it and are they blindsided or how they are taking it, like how they are motivating to do their work, like if there is no future to become something in that field. Yeah.
So they are like, honestly, they are not strategically doing these things. One example I'm giving. One very young guy, he was like from the same Kurme Mahato, means agricultural community. And he was preparing for this defense type of job, like the army and all these things. And he was very good at this thing. And because of the family pressure, he had to migrate, because he like try for a few times and he failed. And he like the family also believing that if you like try some like 2 more time or like 1 more time, you could have like succeed in that particular job. But he had to migrate, and like I saw this guy in Bangalore only, RT Nagar. And when like interacting with that person, like, what is the plan, Babu? So are you going to like give the exam, or like what is the plan? And he said, भैया नहीं हुआ, but सपना देखना बंद नहीं किए हैं. So like still well, like I am dreaming about the job. So if you like asking about that, they're building that big house, it's not strategic. They are like doing, they are like succeeding. If they're like succeeding, they are doing like succeeding. If they're like failing, they are like failing. Like their vulnerability is increasing particularly. The other side, like that is the positive side of that, like success. One helper become mason become contractor and build the toppest, like the tallest house in the village. The other part of that, one person was specializing in the centering work. When he back to the village, and he did not get the work, and he started selling this mohua, and he did not get the works that he was like specialized in. Then he had to take loan at 12% rate of interest to start his migration networks, but he could not like mobilize the people, so he failed. Then he took another loan, and he had to sell all the land, mortgage his house, and now he's like staying like there is like village near, there is like forest near to this village, and he built like house near to that forest in a like a common land. So that is the other part of this like failure of this like migration network.
Yeah. The other question we had? Yeah. We'll stick to one question, please. Sorry. Yeah.
So the common thing between us and the other company that you spoke about is that we are both Bangalore based, but that's where the commonality ends. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's where the commonality ends. The uncommon thing is one, Quest is just 17 years old. We are extremely entrepreneurial in nature. Starting from our chairman, Mr. Ajit Isaac, Bangalore based again, who started the firm. I think the high degree of entrepreneurial freedom and empowerment inside Quest to support your worker side of the community or to support your customer side of the ecosystem is immense. Second is very early in the day, Quest understood that the people business requires humongous amount of technology. We were the first in this industry to come out with mobile applications for blue collar, gray collar workers where facial recognition could tell you this person is working at this pin code on this day for this customer, and their productivity charts and everything could be there. Through that, Dr. Shashi also briefly mentioned, there are a lot of other things like payday loans, credit cards, other lending devices. And also, we created an ecosystem using technology for all our extended workforce. Lakhs and lakhs of people of it. We invested a lot in technology. Over the years, we continue to invest. And the third, more importantly, is that we realize that as much as tech you can use, it has to be a touch business. If you are not physically present 100 kilometers or maximum 150 kilometers from your nearest associate or nearest customer, you cannot make this happen. So Quest even today has 200 extended offices for customers in the country and 65 branch offices of our own. You'll find us in Assam, you'll find us in Rajasthan, you'll find us in JNK, you'll find us in Kerala. While payrolling, treasury, everything functions from a single site in Bangalore or two sites and one backup site somewhere else. The question is, we can still run it with just 2 or 3 sites, but we yet invested in 200 offices for customers and 65 for frontliners. And very recently, we went a step further. And one of the panelists was asking me before we got inside the room. And I told them we recently started something called job spots. So we said, ये जो youth आता है, जो migration चाहता है, जो informal से निकल के formal market में आता है, they're very confused. They've just done an education, but they don't know what to do thereafter. Where are the jobs in retail? Where are the jobs in banking? Where are the jobs in IT? Where are the jobs in manufacturing? What they can do? They don't even know their rights. When I'm talking to people in Patna and Bihar, and we say, we've recently started construction as a work. They said, how much will we get paid? We'll say about 30,000 in a month, and you'll work with giants like L&T and Tata Projects and all. You know what is the question I get from their parents? साहब कितना पैसा देना पड़ेगा भर्ती के लिए? I said, क्यों देना पड़ेगा पैसा? We will give you money. Why do you have to give us money? So they are that naive. They don't even know this. So we opened very recently, Quest opened something called Job Spots. We went to Hosur, we went to Narsapura, we went to Patna, we went to Chakan, and we said we'll open job spots here so that when the vulnerable part of Bharat comes here and the children come for the first time, they don't go to unscrupulous elements and they can directly land up at a Quest office, talk to a counselor, come to know what kind of jobs are available, and then move on from there. So these are some of the things which differentiate us from any other payrolling company.
I'll be very, very quick. Yeah. I think my first response is that it does not surprise me your three experiences because in my personal capacity, I feel that one of the major issue because of what you experience with the three bureaucrats is there is no concept of formal handover when transfers happen. And that leads to a lot of confusion in the newcomer who is going to come and take over the responsibility. And in my mind, that is one of the major reason that there is no formal handover. And that further leads to why it becomes more difficult is that when it moves from there to a personality based management of the office, wherein every individual wants to leave the legacy as he or she feels right. So I think in my mind, these two things. And second point, I think you answered for it. Why the investment at the mid management level? Because these are the people who hold the institutional memory. And it is high time that, it should be, most of the resources should be spent on the capacity building of this group. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, I mean, at this stage, I think I would still want a two-liner closing remark from each of you on how you can contribute to the state's capacity. We have talked about the various challenges the labor force in its evolution has been posing to the state. But each of us are sort of representing one or the other parties that are also part of the labor market and the labor force that we are trying to nurture. Now, I mean, Dr. Shashikant, can we hear from you and the best part of contributing to the state's capacity?
So the first and the most important thing, it will be a tripartite collaboration across all three stakeholders. One is corporate or organization who are employing and engaging different type of workforce. The second one is government itself, which we call referring to state, who are drafting laws, regulation, policies around it, and where the people comes around and creating the regulation. The third one is the person itself, individual, which Dr. Ajit has told about that they also facing some certain challenges. So he also required to partner in some of the skilling or reskilling, like Lohit has talked about some certain spot has been created where the people can come and do some certain learning. And similarly, many organizations keep doing those learnings, but it has to be formalized. So the first thing is tripartite collaboration. Second thing is tech enable governance mechanism of regulate of whatever regulation is being enacted. It has to be tech enabled. It cannot be like different independent system of working independently. It has to be collaborative integrated interface that has been created across. And last but not the least, portable. So the future will be portable gig workers will be requiring portable benefits going forward. So a particular person, maybe Shashikant, might be working as a service provider to different organization, not as an employee, but as a gig worker, even in a formalized setup. But my benefit is required to be protected by some certain regulation, and that portability required to come in place. So that's three things from my side.
Yeah, I think in my mind, collaboration for sure. I think in my mind, there are four actors: government, private sector, social development sector, and academic institutions like yours, who all need to play a kind of a role in it. I think we need to build upon each other's strength rather than looking at only from our lens is something that we need to do because as a social development expert, I might be saying, okay, हम तो बहुत सारा कुछ raise कर रहे issue, but nothing is happening because government doesn't want to work. Private sector is acting like a competitor to government. So we need to come out of that particular zone and stop looking at each other as competitor. So that's one. And overall, I think trust more and doubt less is something that we need to follow. Thank you.
So a couple of things need to be done. Obviously, enterprise and governments need to work together. In the last couple of years, whether it's state governments or union governments, the trust towards enterprises has gone up. And the governments have understood that at the end of the day, economic growth, employment growth comes from the private sector. So you have to trust the private sector, you have to enable the private sector, you have to allow the private sector to play well. And then you have to monitor to see that they there are no frauds, or there's governance and compliance. So that's the first. The second is, I think, the fact that we need to climb quickly on this informality to formal employment or economy is very, very crucial. 2047 Viksit Bharat is not because it coincides with just the centenary of India's independence. It is going to be the time when we start to become an aged society. And if we don't become a rich society before we become an aged society, today there are 65% of the people who are in the working age population. They take care of, 1/3 of the people who are either children or who are olders. If you add the children who will come into the workforce in the next 15 or 18 years, that's 90% of the population either working today or will work in the next 15 to 20 years, and taking care of only 10% of the population. 20 years later, this data will not be this. This data will be absolutely the other way around. There'll be less kids coming, less getting born, less going into the labor market, and hence your pension fund required and aged society taking care will be higher needs. So we have to, in the next 20 years, formalize both the economy as well as the labor market. Third is, while we are doing this, we have to take care of still parts of our society which is not even or equal. And it could be anybody, it could be gender inequality, it could be economic inequality, it could be caste based or any other form. We have to take care of that and do a serious measure to ensure that that is taken care of. And fourth, we need to come out with very specific regulations which takes care of vulnerability. Should not be like that. Today, when you go to Middle East or you go to Southeast Asia, they proudly will tell you that it is the Indian worker who's constructing those Singapores of the world and those Dubais of the world. Why do we make our workers live in shanties like this and then push them to a Dubai or a Singapore to live? Why can't we have labor camps and formal labor camps, dormitories and everything, the exact same way that our neighboring countries have already achieved in the last 20, 30 years, and then take away the vulnerability like this? China has done it in manufacturing in a big way. And if you do this, you will not have those mosquitoes. You will not have, lack of production. You will not have medical issues and reasons and all, and your economic output will be a lot bigger. So I think these are very specific agendas and arrangements which have to be done. There have to be tailor-made specific policies and interventions which ensure that that happens. The good part is that there is a unison between enterprises and governments. There's a lot of listening on both the sides, and there is a quick need to change.
Thank you.
Yeah, before answering to your questions, just can I make one remarks to what Lohit was making. So these workers, the construction workers are working in such jobs which require more motor skills, means the physical work. So the early retirement it's a problem for them. So they can't work after 40s. So when they go back to their home, what they will do? That is a big challenge. Coming to their questions, there are 3 points. So there are different actors, and these actors should the role should be divided among these actors. One is the state should ensure the equitable access to the training or the skill development policy initiatives, and the credit which is required for the migrations if you are not providing skills through the formal process, and if the workers are learning the skills through the informal processes. Then the regulations part. The private sector provides the market linkages and the operational part, and the community and the community networks and also the NGOs. So they should mobilize the workers and also reduce the exclusion. One example, quick example, if I'll give. So this Naik, the SC people I was talking about, they're excluded from this migration because they did not have the migration capital. Recently, after COVID-19, when they did not get the workers, these people every day they were commuting to Ranchi, 50 kilometers they are going and they are coming 50 kilometers every day to and do the construction work, and they don't know whether they will get the work or not get the work. One day I met one person in this Gola railway station, and he said that काम मिला तो राम राज, नहीं मिला तो घर आके सो जाएंगे. So if I'll get the work, it is well and good. If I'll not get the work, I'll come and sleep in my home. So that is the uncertainty. So what they will do, the women from the that particular community, they took the loan from like different financial like there was Ashirvad Finance and these financial companies were there. So they took loan to start the businesses, like particularly the livestock and other like purchasing goods particularly, and they channelized that money. They gave this money to one person from that Naik community, and that person started a network. And he is now running one network in Ranchi. They did not have that amount of capital like the Kumar or the Mahatos, but they had the capital to mobilize from that district to other districts. So that community initiatives can also provide these workers access to the work available in the cities. So this synergy is like requires state, the divisions of the role between the state, private sectors, and the communities and the NGOs.
Right, right. I mean, that's the point that is coming into my mind also in terms of, reiterating the need for a collaborative effort from the part of the state, the employer, the worker, the intermediary, everybody in sort of ensuring that we have a labor force that has sustainable and decent jobs. On that note, I think I would like to wrap it up here. Thank you both for being a wonderful panel and for your insights and grounded perspectives on what can be done to the labor force amidst all the turbulence that it sort of is witnessing. I would like to, extend a token of our appreciation. I request Professor Kamath or Rajalakshmi Kamath to hand it over to our panelists.
Just as an aside, both Lakshmi and Ajit, I was on their dissertation advisory committees, and it was sheer pleasure for me today to hear both of them. Yeah, I hope our students make progress like this.
Yeah, I think we'll take a photo. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll first thank you. Thanks, Lakshmi.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you for being a wonderful audience. I hope I'm not leaving you with a very grim picture, but have some hope on the capacity of the state and as we all enter the labor force and have a constructive, a sustainable job. So not holding you anymore.
Photo, no?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't come.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Yes.